Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Radio Europa, episode 23. I'm joined live tonight by Laura.
Hello.
and Boris, if you're there as well. Hello.
Hello.
Hi, guys. So tonight we're going to spend some time discussing the sinister reality behind the United Nations Migration Pact, followed by a bit of a Q&A audience engagement session. So before we start, I'll say, as I always do, that we rely on supporter donations to be able to keep bringing you original content. And whilst we don't like to ask you for money, if you do want to donate a small amount, then the links to PayPal, Streamlabs, and that sort of thing are in the description below for you to do so, and it would be greatly appreciated. Right, so now that's all out of the way, let's get on to the meat of what we're going to talk about, which is the Migration Pact. So I know Laura and Boris are on with me tonight. I've done a bit of reading about this, and we're pretty much up to speed. And we've got some good points we want to talk through. But Laura, can you just give the listeners a bit of background as to what this is all about, and then what stage it's at the moment?
Yes, certainly. So, hello everybody. So the UN Migration Pact, the full name is the Global Compact for Safe, Orderly and Regular Migration, or the GCM. It first kind of passed and was finalised in June of July this year, but the members of the United Nations are going to Morocco next month in December to sign the pact. All it is basically, I'm not sure how in-depth to get about it, but it's just one of those rubbish documents that's all kind of like migration has always happened and it's beneficial to us, diversity is our strength. Not sure who actually still believes this. But it's very kind of Orwellian, and it talks about things like we want to eliminate all forms of racism, xenophobia and discrimination. We want to be able to penalise people for hate crimes. We want to train the law enforcement so that they can penalise people for basically speaking out against migration. It's just completely cracking down on it. It's also blurring the lines between refugees and economic migrants, which is a huge concern for people because there's an unlimited amount of economic migrants, and the way that it reads, it sounds like you're not allowed to criticise that anymore. So you can't use the argument of, okay, we'll accept people that are fleeing war. It really is blurring the lines between them. It feels to me like the United Nations know that everybody's against mass immigration. I mean, just to give Britain for an example, ever since mass immigration started in 1948, the public have been overwhelmingly against it, but they just want to ignore it and they just want to silence people so that they can't complain about it. That's kind of an overview of it. Merkel has come out and defended it. She's supporting it, so that should tell you everything that you need to know about it. I'm not actually sure what Macron has said about it, but lots of countries have come out and rejected it and saying that they won't be going to sign it next month. So obviously, should I list through these, William, or are we going to get to that in a bit?
Yeah, well, you might as well go for it. Yeah, say who's refused to sign it. Yeah.
Okay, so obviously it started with the United States, and Donald Trump said, "We recognise every country has the right to set its own immigration policy in line with national interests." And he said, "We respect your policies, please respect ours." So Donald Trump is kind of leading the way, but Hungary, Viktor Orban, as we'd expect, he's completely against it. The Czech Republic, Bulgaria, Poland, Austria, they're very fiercely against it. They're saying that migration is not a right. I believe Australia are also against it. And Israel, shocker, no open borders for Israel because they're against it as well. Croatia, we're against it, but they've now changed their minds and said that they will accept it. Italy, I don't think we've had a firm decision from Italy yet, but I mean, if Salvini has anything to do with it, then I guess they'll be saying no as well. But yeah, that's kind of where we are at the moment. Countries like the United Kingdom, we don't know what's going to happen. I imagine that Theresa May will probably sign it because she's just weak. But there is actually a petition going in England if anybody wants to sign it to say that she shouldn't sign the pact. Yeah, that's kind of it. That's an overview of where we are today.
Yeah. So yeah, it's been around for quite a while, hasn't it? And as you can tell by the short list of countries that have refused to sign it, it's got almost unanimous support from Western governments. But I'd draw everybody's attention to something that's quite sinister in it. So Laura mentioned that it alludes to hate crime legislation and things like that. So in the booklet, Objective 17 on page 24, it says that it basically says that they're going to try and compel national governments to enact, implement, or maintain legislation that penalizes hate crimes and aggravated hate crimes, targeting migrants. So whilst this is not a codified legal document in the sense that the United Nations don't have the power at the moment to compel signatories to abide by it. However, as we know with these documents, they tend to find their way into national law pretty quickly, and it seems to be implying that new hate crime legislation drafted by the same suspects will be put in place to accompany it. Boris, Croatia, just as a bit of a side issue, tell us a bit about that. What's going on there? Because they were against it, now they're for it, and what's going on?
Yeah, well, it's kind of our thing, you know. We jump from extremes. We tend to be extreme like that. Much like that game we played against England, you know. We were leading. Well, the guys were doing well in the first half. But we got the first goal, and then in the last 10 minutes, it falls apart, you know. Weird. Well done, Kane, by the way. Anyway, that's a sideshow. What happened here is, well, people don't understand our political system. So they think that when our president, who's the most well-known figure, when she said that she would not go to sign it, a lot of people seized on that and thought, oh, that's the president, the leader of the country. So her saying that she's not going to to Marrakesh to sign the convention, that must mean that Croatia is safe now. Well, unfortunately, that wasn't the case. The case is that the president in our republic is more of a figurehead, more of she doesn't really have much institutional power. The power rests with the prime minister, Andrej Plenković, and he and the government decide what to do, and they decided to accept the bloody agreements. And the reason why they did it is because, well, Plenky, that's the nickname we give him in Croatia. He is basically an EU stooge, a Eurocrat, and a bit of a globalist. So, you know, it's funny because when you talk to the average person in Croatia, they are completely against migrants or anyone coming. But yeah, our government is completely divorced from what the average person wants and the average person's experience.
Yeah, I think that's probably the same in a lot of Western governments, because everybody's been quite quick to pledge their allegiance to this deal, and I think it's like they view migration in a very abstract term. They don't look at real world consequences. They just see the words on the page and in principle think, oh, it's a good idea. It sounds nice. We'll support human rights and all the usual trope that they've wheeled out since 1945. And I think that's probably the case with your government as well, in that they see this in such abstract terms and they don't appreciate the sinister undertones behind what's been put on paper, because it's wrapped in the language of human rights. So on that note, I'm going to draw attention to another bit, again, under Objective 17, to where it commits signatories to promote independent, objective and quality reporting of media outlets, including internet-based information, by sensitizing and educating media professionals on migration-related issues and terminology, investing in ethical reporting standards and advertising, and this is the important bit, and stopping allocation of public funding or material support to media outlets that systematically promote intolerance, xenophobia, or racism. Now, those are very broad definitions, and you could be looking, I mean, that leaves scope, for instance, to say newspaper X doesn't toe the party line on this issue, so we're going to harass and cajole the advertisers and the shops that stack it, and we're going to put newspaper X out of business. So, you know, Laura, I mean, I don't know what you think about the media implications, but it does seem to me that there's some sinister undertones there.
Yeah, it just seems to be getting worse, doesn't it? And we talk a lot about shifting the Overton window in our direction, but I think we sometimes forget that they're shifting it in their direction as well. And stuff doesn't seem shocking anymore because they do it so often. I just worry how far it's going to go. I mean, look at somebody like Nigel Farage, for example, who's pretty kind of normie friendly by our standards, isn't it? If he criticised mass immigration, would that be too far? Would they want to shut him down? But yeah, it's very kind of flimsy words. So eliminate all forms of racism, xenophobia, and discrimination. I mean, discrimination, that's a dodgy word, because if you like spoke out against mass immigration, would that be classed as discrimination? But surely nobody supports mass immigration. I just think the words are so loose that they can do anything with it. But the part that scared me the most was where it says train up law enforcement to be able to penalise hate crimes, because we've already got talk of an EU army as well. It just feels completely Orwellian, like they're just completely shutting down on us. But one bit, which is hilarious, says that they're still committed to freedom of expression, which is just a lot of rubbish, isn't it? How can you say that you're going to silence people for criticising the things that you don't want them to silence, but then at the same time make out like you care about freedom of expression? Yeah, and I can imagine that the people that they will give funding to is obviously going to be like, you know, we know the people that control the media and the messages that they want out there, but then any media that's opposing that, they're just not going to get funding anymore. And then if we top off with things like the EU meme ban, the censorship that we're facing on social media, YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, everyone's just been suspended from everything. I just think it's going to become more and more difficult as time goes on to say what we want to say.
Yeah, it's definitely true, and especially if this sort of documentation becomes law in our countries, then it's really going to put the squeeze on free expression against migration. But you alluded there to the meme ban, and that might sound a bit weird to some people listening, but or you might know all about it, but we'll see. The meme ban. So I don't know very much about this, so I'm going to hand over to Boris. It's sort of related. It's about freedom of expression and the spreading of information on the internet. So, Boris, can you tell us about the meme ban and what's been going down with Reddit today or in the last few days?
Sure. So the meme ban is what we colloquially call it, but its real name is Article 13, and it's still in a sort of process of being accepted by the EU. So it passed the first round of negotiation, was accepted by the EU, and apparently there's a second set of policies and rules and whatnot that they have to all agree on before it fully gets ratified and starts being used. But basically, what it does is it makes it impossible for people to use copyrighted material in any way in their videos. And also, what was it? There was that, and there was some sort of tax for advertisements. So the way they implement it is if you put any kind of copyrighted material, even like 2 seconds of some popular song, like a popular example that's used is Despacito, that famous song. So if you have 2 seconds of that, for example, Article 13 mandates that you take down the whole video. So 20 minutes of content, let's say, and it gets struck down for 2 seconds of copyrighted thing. And so what every company would have to do is manually go through every content creator's videos, articles, podcasts, anything and everything, and check if they have copyrighted materials. And if they do, then somehow filter it or get people to not do that. And as you can imagine, that's an impossible task, because what was it? I think some 5,000 hours or something like that, probably more.
So what's probably going to happen is they're going to just, rather than go through everybody's content, they're going to just block it, basically, aren't they?
Yeah, exactly. That's the CEO of YouTube, Susan Wojcicki. She said that is what they would have to do. There's no way they can go through everyone's content and check. So in effect, they will just ban videos that do that in the EU, which means that any content we would be able to see in the EU would just be videos from giant corporations. So,
I mean, that's quite concerning, really, because I don't think people, when the Article 13 stuff went around, I don't think everybody was fully aware of the ramifications of this. Because
not at all.
So what you're basically saying, based on the information, is that in the European Union, the only videos you're going to be able to watch on YouTube is the nonsense adverts published by like Costa Coffee, or the sound bites from Sky News, or whatever the content equivalents are. So I mean, what's that could have really serious implications, especially if you just think of a meme like Pepe the Frog or something. Technically there's a copyright there, isn't there?
Yeah, basically. So
so they'd have to block all that stuff in the EU. So you can imagine a situation where our internet access is going to be like worse than Iran or China or something, because it's just approved content. Well, that's scary. What's happened with Reddit? Because haven't they tried to raise awareness about this?
Oh yeah, exactly. Reddit, they ran a huge campaign on the day that the information broke. It was like 2 months, or maybe a few months more now, that the information initially broke, when all the articles about it came out, and when we officially turned up the meme ban. And so Reddit, they all ran a huge campaign to raise awareness and to sign petitions to get governments to stop and to not accept it. And so what they did today, their latest effort, is they restricted access to people. So you can't use Reddit in the EU. They restricted it, and so most people couldn't use it today for a set amount of hours. And they did that in an attempt to show people what the future will look like if they don't stand up for their rights, their internet freedoms, basically. It's called, the petition that's going around, it's called Save the Internet. So if you type that in as a hashtag anywhere, you can very quickly get to the big talking points, the big videos about it and everything like that.
Yeah, I mean that's because that's what they're trying to replicate, what it would be like if these sorts of measures were implemented. And if you guys listening want to imagine what the future is going to look like if we're not careful, when you would normally go on Twitter or YouTube and watch videos or whatever, put your technology away for a day, or restrict yourself to only going on mainstream media websites, and don't go on Twitter.
Imagine like only being able to see MTV or the news channels, or I don't know, government channels. That's basically it. Any sort of independent content will, by its nature, have copyrighted material. So, and all of that will get banned. So,
yeah. And just on a broader point on that, you see, this is what the European Union is really about, because all of these measures are lobbied for by the big news corporations whose market is being eroded by independent media and freelance journalism. And this is what EU law is all about, is they have big lobbyists in Brussels. I mean, you can look this up. They've got, I think, like 30,000 big corporate lobbyists stationed permanently in Brussels. And they reckon that 75% of EU law is as a result directly of lobbying from these big corporations. Now, what they do, and they do this not just at the media and the internet, but they do it with like everything from tobacco to furniture production, all this nonsense, and but especially with the media. And they basically lobby for measures. They don't care about freedom. They care about squeezing out the competitors. So they want to make it impossible for you as an independent journalist, or whatever you call yourself, like an information awareness raiser or whatever. They want to make it impossible for you to do that. So they put all these copyrights, bans, and all this nonsense in the way, so that these people have total saturation of the market all to themselves. That's what the internet's going to look like in Europe in the future, in the very near future, if this stuff isn't averted. I just want to sort of bring that back to the migration pact, and Laura, ask you about this, because there's a particular point in the migration pact literature about basically saying we need to educate journalists to say what we want them to say. And it links in with something that Breitbart reported on a few years back, that George Soros basically has a fund where they send would-be journalists to these, like, I don't know what you'd call them, boot camps for journalists, where they basically get programmed, you know, like, this is how we want you to talk. I mean, this, if you think of that Article 13 and the meme ban and then this migration pact, this is all coming together to basically, it's all going to come together at once to make sure that there's only one line spread on the internet or in the television media about immigration. How real do you think that threat is?
Well, I mean, I know we keep saying it over and over again, but it is like 1984, isn't it? And it's getting a bit kind of boring and repetitive hearing people saying that, but it's just so accurate. It's scary, the amount that they try to control what we see and what we think and what our opinions are. It's just non-stop propaganda. In fact, this is what my last video is about, that which on topic with the conversation, has also been censored by YouTube for being controversial and or offensive, even though it didn't break any rules. And I think, yeah, I just think they're relentless. I don't think they'll stop. If anything, I think it's the positive that we can take out of it is that they see us as a threat. And I think we're having an impact, even if you just look at like the influence that we had on the presidential election in 2016. I mean, people like us got Trump elected, didn't we? So I think that they do see us as a threat. That's why they're trying to silence us. But yeah, I'm not really sure what else to add. I just think they'll end up pushing it underground, because we have the truth on our side and we're the good guys. So we're not just suddenly going to go, all right, yeah, we'll start reading The Guardian and watching the BBC and change our minds. That's not going to happen. All these people are going to have the same opinions that they have now, and they'll just end up pushing it underground. So they'll just make it worse, to be honest, because it won't be out in the open. See it. That's what I think will happen. And I think that once you wake up and once you realise what's going on, you don't go back to sleep. So if they think that they're going to bully people into changing their opinions, it's not going to work. But yeah, I just think it's going to, as I mentioned before, they're shifting the Overton window in their direction too, and they're just going to get worse and worse and worse, I think. And the language in this UN Migration Pact, the whole, is it Article 18, the EU meme ban, it's scary, really.
Yeah, and I think what you said is correct, that the likelihood is that this doesn't actually change opinion. If anything, it hardens opinion in the other direction, which is good for us. So, you know, every cloud has a silver lining, as we say in England. So I think it will have a radicalizing effect, but it creates that forbidden fruit feeling about an idea, which is gold dust. You know, if you want to make a book an overnight bestseller, the best thing you can do is ban it, because then everybody wants to read it. So whilst it's not ideal because it makes sharing information difficult, I would say in one sense, bring it on, because like Laura said, we have a lot of truth on our side. And now if you make our ideas illegal, you're going to just make them sexy, for want of a better word, and people are going to be drawn to it. So I just want to deal with some things that people in the audience have said. So somebody asked, I can't quite remember who, but somebody asked, aren't they trying to jail people in the UK for watching far-right propaganda online? Short answer, yes. The former Home Secretary of the Conservative government proposed, I think it was like a 5-year mandatory prison sentence for I think they defined it as the repeated watching of far-right propaganda. Of course, they didn't define what that was. Somebody else has asked, what can we do to make a positive impact in the real world? Boris, I'm going to put that one over to you, because you've probably got some good ideas about this. So what can people do to make a positive impact in the real world, particularly in the context of fighting against these international gangster agreements by the United Nations?
Right. Boris the Guru will tell you what to do.
Exactly.
Well, what can we do? So that's the eternal question. Well, we have to. One thing we all should focus on. It's going to sound corny, but it's really true. We have to focus on self-improvement. We have to focus on becoming as non-dependent on the state, as self-reliant as possible. That means quite a few things. I'll break it down. So it means definitely try to avoid any kind of debt. Debt makes you a slave. I know that the world right now revolves around debt. That our whole monetary system is created on debt. But yeah, leave that aside. Just do not go into debt for any reason. Any reason. Use cash. Always have cash on hand. Do not go into debt. That's one big thing. Another thing is get into shape. Be in shape. You have to be in shape. Your body is a weapon, and a strong body means a strong mind. There's this saying, so it goes, if you have a strong body, but a weak mind, you are an egghead. If you have a strong mind, if you have a strong body and a weak mind, you are a meathead. If you have a strong mind but a weak body, you are an egghead. But if you have a strong mind and a strong body, well, then you're just ascendant. So that's the goal. That's the second thing, stay in shape. Another thing, and which is definitely a thing that we have been consistently losing these past few decades, is create local communities. So create organizations, speak with your friends, speak with your neighbors, get into local groups, contribute to the community, forge those connections, and become a person that others can rely on, and also foster that in other people so that you can all help each other out. Those three things, they sound really simple, really easy, but it's the little things that count. It's always the little things that count. And what else? Well, another thing that can help us in the political sense is try to get into local office. You don't have to, there's this idea that people have of glorious revolution and fighting in the streets. So the future is just too uncertain, and the trends as they're going right now, they don't really suggest that. So just in my mind, one of the best things that we can do is why not have contingencies in place? Why not try to put people in positions of power so that there is local power that we can use to affect change? Yeah, those are some ideas that we can use.
Well, certainly, and I think that point about political power is important, because at the end of the day, I think people lose sight of this, but the primary purpose, or the only real purpose of any political activism, is to gain political power. If you're not out to gain political power, then why the hell are you bothering? Because that's the point. That's how you change things, is through political power. So, at some point, somewhere, somebody's got to talk about office and standing for office, or whatever means you go through to get to that. I think there's been a few other things said in the comments section. While I'm just reading through, can I just remind everybody, hit like and subscribe if you haven't already, because it really does help us bolster our numbers for these. And last week's live stream is quite a success, actually. Hence, we've decided to do it live again tonight. Okay, I'm going to just put this to Laura, because there's a bit of a broad, jokey question here, but a serious point. So somebody asked, why is the world so fucked up right now? But, there's a myriad of answers. But on the issue of what can we do in ourselves to make a positive change to this world that is so messed up right now, Laura, I just thought I'd give you the opportunity to add your 2 pence in there, because it's an important topic.
Is this a question that Boris just answered? Sorry, about positive change, did you say?
Yeah, so I'm sort of giving you the same question, but with an emphasis on, you know, more generally with the problems of the world today.
Yeah, well,
it's basically like, why is the world in the state that it is now?
Well, I guess we could get into things like cultural Marxism and the Frankfurt School, but that's a very, very deep conversation and maybe one for another day. In fact, maybe not one for YouTube at all. But I just think that we have very strong, powerful enemies. I think they control all our systems, our education systems, our media, our banking. Excuse me. And they're just out to get us out there. I mean, we can go into a lot more depth about it, but I think everybody knows that the advice that I would offer to make a positive impact on the world would just be to live your life the way that you profess that you do online. So I think we have a lot of people that talk about traditional values and, you know, wanting to raise big, happy white families and things like that, but then they actually don't. So that is something that you should be moving towards in your real life. If you're not there already, you should have a plan and you should be thinking, that's what I want to do, because we need to increase this data. I think Boris made a really interesting point about rebuilding communities and becoming self-sufficient. So if you can get away from the state as much as you can and be able to stand on your own 2 feet, then obviously there's not a risk of you losing your job if you do get doxxed, or people like kind of attacking you in other ways because you're relying on the state. They can't take away that power from you because they're not giving you it in the first place. And I think one thing that I always talk about quite a lot as well is just helping out local communities. So doing your shopping from the local butchers rather than going to big, massive supermarket chains and things like that. There's quite a lot in that way. And also just to reiterate what Boris said about being the best version of yourself. Reading is important. I always try and read for at least an hour every day. Exercise is important. And taking time out for yourself, because it can get blackpilling quite often when you're reading stories about migrant raping children and stuff in Sweden. So I think it's important to take time away from that. And just me time, really, whether that's you going out for a run or you enjoying some music or whatever. But you're no good to us if you're completely blackpilled and you're bringing other people down all the time. So I think it's important to try and keep spirits high as well. That's what I'd say.
Yeah, I'd definitely affirm all of those points. I actually think that last point is as important as the rest. That, you know, I've known so many people who have been involved in this political activism, and they've just got so depressed with it all that they've had to stop, because it can make you suicidally depressed, especially if you really care about this. So I think that, you know, it is important to keep yourself positive, keep yourself happy by just step away from it all for a bit, you know. Just moving on slightly, Leandra Martinez in the chat asks, please honestly, is this a religious war or an economic war? Now, that's a really interesting question, because I don't think it's either. I think it's an ethnic war, where certain groups have gained positions of power to enact tribal revenge, perhaps. And religion and economics are just weapons. They're just tools. You know, you think of big banks, big business, Islam. They're useful idiots for the people who are fighting the war. They're not really the culprits in and of themselves. They are just useful idiots, in my opinion. Boris, I don't know what you think about that, just briefly on the question of that Leandro asked about religious war or economic war.
Sure. Well, I definitely agree with what you said, that it's a bit of both. But what I would add to that is, well, take a look at our economic system for one, because money makes the world go around. It's what we're dependent on in this world. So take a look at the economic system, and then take a look at those on top, the globalists, the corporatists, and they come in all shapes, sizes, religions, and all of that. There's globalists everywhere. There's nationalists everywhere. It's not quite black and white. But the problem is that the general problem in the world is that wealth tends to, in this system, wealth is accumulating in the hands of the few, and the gap between, we call them the 1%, but yeah, the really, really rich of the world and the average person is always growing because of the system. And so one way you can look at this whole story that has been unfolding since 2015, but since far longer than that too. It really kicked off in 2015 in Europe, at least. One way to look at it is that the powers that be, let's call them, they just want more. They want more. Their greed can't be satisfied. They want more money, more wealth. And one great way to make that happen is by destroying borders, destroying identity, destroying history, culture, everything. Because when a people doesn't have a history, when they're much easier to control, when there's a million groups in one small place rather than one large cohesive group, it's just divide and conquer at that point. So yeah.
Yeah, I think they're all very good points. I'm just looking in the comment section as we've been talking about this, and there's a lot of people hypothesizing as to who the 1% are, who we're paying persistent usury interest repayments to. Lots of treble brackets, parentheses, round numbers. This is yeah, I think you guys are pretty clued up on this stuff, I've got to say. So we've had some more questions and comments in there. What else we had? Another one from Leandro. What will happen with the Europe of South America, Argentina? Argentina is fascinating. I was listening to a lecture by David Irving earlier, and he talked about how one fateful appearance on an Argentinian news station with a presenter he had like some proper South American name like Gonzalo Rodriguez, but his original real name was like Epstein or something. And this got his entire speaking tour shut down. So, you know what? I don't think they're immune from the problems any more than we are. They might just have a better racial balance sheet, but I don't think...
No one is.
Yeah, exactly. I don't think they're immune. There's another question which I wanted to look at in more depth and bring Laura in on this. I'm not going to read out that screen name because I'll probably get us banned off YouTube, but somebody asks from the UK, can we win a spiritual war when the spirit of the West is broken? Wow, there's a lot in there. Laura, what do you think?
Sorry, I'm losing my voice again. It always happens on our screens. Yeah, well, I think that spirituality is something that we're completely missing. And it's something that I've been thinking about a lot over the last year or so, because you need a higher purpose. You need something to live for, whether that's religion or whether that's racial pride. I mean, if you're white, racial pride isn't allowed, is it, at the moment? So that one's kind of out of the question. But I think you need some sort of direction. Otherwise, you're likely to fall into a trap of living a rather nihilistic lifestyle. And look how powerful Islam is. And look how committed they are to each other and their religion and their family. And we could actually learn a lot from that. And I think that because the number of Christians is dropping in England on a regular basis, every census comes out, it's the smaller and smaller percentage of the population, and atheists are a larger and larger percentage of the population. It's missing, isn't it? That spirituality is missing. And I think it's something that we need to look at bringing back. I don't want to get into the whole Christian versus pagan debate because, I mean, I was christened when I was a baby. I went to church until I was about 10 years old and then just kind of abandoned it. I'm not an atheist, but I've never had religion in my adult life. I mean, I would get married in a church and, you know, some of my family go to church and stuff, but it's missing. And I think it's missing for a lot of people. So it's an interesting question. I think it's something that you could go into in quite a lot of depth. But I think that we do need that spirituality. And if you would have asked me that question a year and a half ago, I would have said that it wasn't necessary. But now I'm definitely leaning towards, yeah, we are missing it. We are missing that higher purpose. What do you two think? I'm interested to get your thoughts.
Well, I think this is a good question, because I know you briefly alluded to the Christian pagan debate, and that's probably one for another day. We'd probably need a referee or something, but because these can get quite heated. But I think the most important thing that I would say on this is spirituality, because this puts a lot of people off. Spirituality doesn't mean you have to go to church and be a God-fearing Christian, or dance around the maypole or whatever. You don't actually have to do any of that stuff. If it's not natural to you, I mean, if you want to, great, but if it's not natural to you, don't pretend to be something you're not. But you can have spirituality without following the Christian teachings or pagan writings or whatever. You can have I don't want to call it a humanist spirituality, because that sounds kind of wishy-washy in human rights language, but a nature-based spiritual view that sees the divinity in life and purpose and a reason to do the things you do, without you having to go and profess God. So,
oh, whoops! I think you cut out there for a moment. Yeah, what I was gonna.
Sorry, did I cut out?
Yeah, your mic cut out, I think.
Oh, sorry about that. I don't know what happened there.
Yeah, no problem. You want to go on, or?
No, you carry on. I don't know where I got to, so you carry on.
Okay, sure. So, no, yeah, I agree with your point. But what I wanted to say is, I'm Catholic, so just to get that out of the way. But no, you don't have to be Catholic or pagan. You can be simply spiritual. And my view is we can all work together. We're all pro-European. We all want our people to thrive and survive. And that's what we have to. That's what we can rally behind at the end of the day. So, well, on the note of if our spirit is broken, as you say, there's some big words. Yeah, and if you look at it, if you look at general trends in the world, actually atheism is going down. But that's those statistics are skewed because that's a global sort of projection. It's not just a look at Europe. The situation in Europe is a bit more tenuous because atheists they're actually sort of losing numbers to. There's been a small increase in the number of Christians, but what the worrying part is the increase of Muslims. And so it's interesting if we just look at our adversaries, well, enemies, to be honest, for a moment, and see how they all rally behind that religious fervor. And so, that's something we can use as well. It's not for nothing that the faith, their faith, even though it's false faith, their faith is such a unifying aspect for them. It's something that we, because of our nature, get into philosophy, just Nietzsche and Faust. Something that we, because of our nature, have not fallen, but sort of lost. Because Europeans, we question everything. It's something that we have to look back on, and the church isn't destroyed, Christianity isn't destroyed, paganism is even making a comeback. So if you can be spiritual, it's more comforting than just being an atheist, because most atheists, even though they feel liberated, they're unhappy because they've lost something. They really have. Either it's a connection, that pagans say, to nature or to a higher power, or with us to God, but they have lost something. So try in your own time to think on these things and to reestablish a connection to something greater than yourself. It really helps to get you through the tough times.
Yeah, and I think somebody, before I go on, can I just check everybody can hear me?
Yeah, mic check, everything works.
Yeah, everything's good. I won't say testing 1, 2, 3 then. But I think I was listening to something that Nick Griffin recorded when he was a lot younger the other day, and I agreed with what he said. That basically you can't, and somebody alluded to this in the comments section, that you can't just you can't infuse people to win a war. I'm talking like a metapolitical and cultural war, not literally guns in the street, but you can't infuse people to win any kind of war by saying, oh, but X group commits this amount of crime per capita, and using just facts and statistics and logic and reason will only take you so far. To get over the threshold into real infamy and superstardom in the field of political achievement, because that's of course what you're aiming for. You have to aim to create an earthquake. Otherwise, if you shoot for the clouds, that's boring. Shoot for the stars, you might get somewhere. But anyway, if you want to achieve that, then you need some kind of spiritual possession. You need some spiritual dimension to your belief system that is still coherent, but it has that spiritual edge, which is good. So we've had a few.
Just to give it a meme sort of idea, because we did talk about the EU meme ban. Pagans go to Valhalla when they die. Christians go to heaven. Where do atheists go? They go into a black hole of nothingness. That's what they go.
So, Boris, do you know much about evangelism? Because somebody in the chat's asked, what do we think about evangelism? And to be honest, I don't have the foggiest. So if you two do, then help me out.
Well, I'm not really an expert on all the. To me, evangelism is such an American sort of sect, because in Europe there's three big sort of differentiations in the faith. There's Catholicism, obviously the best. Then there's Orthodoxy, and then there's Protestantism. I'm not quite well versed enough in it to give a satisfying idea of what it is.
Well, I guess you still know more than I do. Just looking at the comments to see if we've got anything else we can discuss. Oh wow, everybody's been busy. One thing I just thought popped into my head. Evangelicals. I think they are quite a big sort of segment of American Christians. And one thing that has made the rounds, and that's been a gigantic propaganda tool, especially in America, and it's the reason why evangelical Christians, when you see the white people, especially Americans, having fervent support of the state of Israel, they have that because they read something called the Scofield Bible, and it's a version of the Bible in which the guy who wrote it, Scofield, he was I think, I'm not quite sure, don't take my word for it, I think he was a Zionist. And what he focused on in the Bible is how the Jews are the chosen people, and which they are in the Bible, but he just hammers it home all the time. And most evangelical Christians read that Bible instead of a regular Bible, like King James version. That's one that everyone should know. But it's a great propaganda tool, and it's a big reason why Israel has so much support among Christians in the US. Yeah, so I think evangelical Christianity in America has been quite damaging to their national interests. So I think objectively we can say that. Just looking through the chat, some people talking about Protestantism and the Puritans. Yeah, the Puritans definitely suspect JPS Rose, because they, Cromwell led the band of Puritans who allowed the usurers back into England, which had devastating effects. what else have we got to look at? Discuss your ideas about. Well, so we spoke about in real life activism last week. I'm just speaking in response to a question now that somebody's asked, but somebody asked us last week, and we outlined a few ideas that we're looking at. But you know, we are primarily engaged in the information war. There are other groups that do very good in real life activism, and we don't want to step on anybody's toes. So we don't want to join an already crowded market, although we wouldn't rule out in real life actions in the future. Let's have a look. Protestants, red pill and race. Wouldn't it be better to make high quality YouTube documentaries like TGSNT? You know, yeah, that it's about finding the time to do stuff like documentaries, because we're all of us who work with Defend Europa, you know, this isn't our main. We all have day jobs like 9-to-5s and stuff, and we just simply don't have the hours in the day to work on massive projects like documentaries. We don't have that luxury at the moment. But if you know a right-wing version of George Soros who wants to throw us a few million, then, you know, put us in touch and we'll get on those documentaries straight away.
We are basically Batman, but without the money.
Yeah, well, definitely. How do you guys feel about the Chinese takeover and invasion of Australia? So this is something really interesting, because I speak to some Australian people, and basically the Chinese have bought up most of Melbourne and they are colonizing it economically, just like the Saudis and the Chinese are doing in London, actually. Laura, sorry, I haven't brought you in for a while. Do you know much about the Australia situation with China? It doesn't matter if not, but just checking.
I don't know. I don't know anything about it. Sorry about that.
Well, you know, it doesn't matter. But basically, the fact is that yeah, that's very negative, and I think some people on the right can kind of idolize the Chinese sometimes. And okay, yeah, they don't like Muslims, but other than that, you know, their political system, they have a shitty political system, and they're the most oppressed, slavish-minded people in the world. So I don't think it's really a model to emulate.
I can add to the Australian question if you want some clarity on it. What was it? It's not just that they're buying up Melbourne, as you said, not just economically, but a lot of Chinese migrants basically have settled in Australia, and their population there is growing, and it's a strange thing with them, because even when they leave their country and they leave that system behind, they're still very loyal to it. And even there's a very good interview, if people are interested in this specific topic of the Chinese takeover of Australia, on Red Ice, on our great friends at Red Ice. They have a video, an interview. Lana did an interview with a Australian Chinese man, and it's very in depth. But basically, the Chinese, they will look down even on their own kin in outside countries who do not support the government back home. So they're very, you know, that idea of cultural and ethnic identity. There's like two parts to identity: cultural and ethnic. The Chinese don't just want the ethnic one; they also want the cultural one. So yeah, that collectivism of theirs it's really powerful.
Yeah, so I don't think that would ever be anything to celebrate.
Not at all.
So somebody's asked, what have we got here? So somebody's asked, just chatting, what do you guys think about Shinto Buddhism? Buddhism's okay. Shinto is really fascinating. I love the Japanese religion. I think it's really interesting. And
the globalists fear the samurai.
Exactly. But what they do with shrines and things is really community oriented.
Oh yeah, it's brilliant. Really, they really value their ancestors. It's amazing.
Yeah, exactly. So it's definitely something interesting. Somebody's put, it doesn't matter if religion is cobblers or not. Well, it kind of does, actually. I think if in a few years' time people realize they've been spun a line, they're going to hate you for eternity. So, you should always aim for the truth as you understand it. I believe.
Yeah.
I know Laura's put it in the chat, but we're just going to chill for a minute now. We're looking for some more subs, 75 to go for 1,000 subs. We're only a young YouTube channel, so we're building slowly. So if you haven't hit like and subscribe already, please do now, because we really appreciate it. And I think your name comes up on the screen. It says like William has subbed or something like that. So yeah, please everybody go and do that. Also, okay, this is the last question we're going to look at. So no more, because we've had quite a few. But so have a good day with a Pikachu picture. I like that picture, by the way. I used to love Pikachu when I was a child. But have a good day asks, why don't you partner with some YouTubers and put their videos on your site and push them on your social media? It could be a win-win. So Laura, I know you've been doing some work on YouTube yourself lately. As you mentioned before, you've already had a run-in with YouTube's diversity moderators, or whatever the hell they are. What do you think about that idea? So maybe if we were to partner with maybe some bigger channels and your channel as well, and increase the traffic that way, what do you think?
Well, I don't think any YouTubers would want to put their videos on our channel, because then that would take away traffic from them and views and engagement, likes and comments and stuff from their channel. But we can share videos in articles. We do that sometimes. There's been a few articles where we've linked to YouTube videos, actually, because I think they embed within the articles and they play quite nicely. I mean, it does take quite a long time to make a video. The 3 that I've made and got on my channel, my last one probably took me about 12 hours to make. So it's not as quick and simple as one might imagine it is. But we do want to move into that area and make our own videos. What we've suggested we do is, if we've got like a really cool news article, like say Viktor Orban does something in Hungary and the fertility rate is increasing, then we can make that article into just a very quick, like 3 to 5 minute video, because then you're reaching those who like to read and those who like to watch. So you're reaching 2 different audiences. So that is a direction that we want to go in. I've been thinking about doing it. I think I could probably make a quick kind of 5 minute video based on an article in about an hour. So it's probably something that I could do after work. But we are going to give that a shot. And I think that will probably bring new people over to Defend Europa, because, as I say, not everybody likes to read articles. Some people get all the news from YouTube. So that's a suggestion. But I don't think other people would let us put their videos on our channel, because, as I say, it's taking their traffic then, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. And but on the subject of what we do with YouTube, we obviously, in the past, we did our first 21 episodes of Radio Europa as pre-recorded podcasts. Last week we did the live stream and it was pretty successful, and we just did an audience interaction. And this week we've done sort of like the podcast, first half of the podcast live like we'd normally do, and then some audience stuff afterwards. So that's been successful so far. We're still trying to get our sub count up and viewer count up, because it's not easy at the moment on YouTube with the current climate of censorship. So but we're doing our best, and again, please hit like and subscribe because it really helps. So I think that's all from us today, because we've done our podcasts bit with the UN Migration Pact, and I'd say to everybody, please go and look that up, because it's really sinister, and make sure you're lobbying officials in your own countries to get the hell out of this, because it is pretty sinister. And thanks again to the audience that engaged with us tonight. So, right, thanks for joining us on this. I hope you've all enjoyed it. And like I said at the beginning, if you want to go back and look at our previous episodes that we pre-recorded, they're all out on YouTube and SoundCloud and on our Twitter. And of course, if you'd like to keep us doing what we're doing and bringing you new and original content on the website and through the podcast, then links are in the description below to donate. Thank you very much if you do. And that is all from us. Good night, everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.